Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Lanes Podcast. Just before we get into the podcast, I just want to talk to you about a new sponsor that's come on board, Books and Gifts Direct. Books and Gifts Direct is Australia's largest direct seller of books and gifts. They sell all of their products from lunchrooms and reception desks, and they're in more than 25,000 workplaces in Australia. These workplaces also include schools, childcare centres, businesses, hospitals, community centres, and other corporate entities. They also sell online at booksandgiftsdirect.com, and they also have up to 70% off recommended retail price on a lot of their products. So if you want to head over, have a look at Books and Gifts Direct, make sure you have a look. The link is going to be in the bio, and you can also maybe look to be a franchise in this company. I'm sure if you want to, it wouldn't be a bad idea, so make sure you definitely have a look at it. But before, let's get into the show. All right, we're back for another episode of the Lanes Podcast. Now, finally, part 3 of the 3-part series, the NBA Power Rankings so far as they stand as of the 6th of September. Without wasting any more time, actually, let's get straight into the intro. Welcome to another episode of the Lanes Podcast. All right, we're back for another episode. As we all know, if you don't know, if this is the first time you listen to the 3-part Power Rankings, I'm just going to say you can go back and have a look at the recent podcasts. They are the ones that I've done. I've done 30 to 20, 19 to 11, and now the top 10 of the NBA. So I'm not going to waste any more time. I'm going to get straight into it. Number 10 for me is the Dallas Mavericks. Now, for me, a lot of teams might have Dallas a little bit lower, but I'm just having them in the top 10 just simply based on the fact that there's a couple of teams right now that are a bit banged up, that aren't super duper and fully healthy. And I think a team like Dallas really has a really good shot if someone like Luka Doncic is on their team, which he absolutely is. That guy nearly got, and I know this for a fact, he nearly got that Dallas team to the second round basically without a lot of help. So for me, I really like him a lot. We all obviously know he's going to be, a top 5 player in the NBA for a long, long time. Most likely a top 20, 30 player if he keeps going like this of all time. So if you have someone like Luka Doncic on your team, you're always going to be strong in a type of position where you're always going to contend. You might not get past the first round or this and that, but I definitely think that someone like them, they'll definitely be in and around the top 10. You look at their starters right now, their starting lineup. Obviously, you would have Luka starting. Someone like a Tim Hardaway would obviously start. He's actually a really good fit, if you ask me, next to someone like Luka Doncic. He actually did a pretty good job last season, keeping him afloat sometimes when Luka obviously needed help, because at the end of the day, you can't win series in the playoffs by just one player taking over a game. You always need a couple more players. So for me, I do think someone like a Tim Hardaway is a nice fit. You look at it, obviously Kristaps Porzingis would definitely start. You can't not start him. Just looking at what he's done in the previous, couple seasons, it hasn't been great, but I think that he can definitely make a change. And I think someone like a Jason Kidd, a new breath of fresh air, a new coach, it might definitely help him and reinvigorate him in a sense. And I think that's someone that definitely needs either a new type of outlook of playing the game or someone that's a new or either going to a different team. So for me, if he starts off really well and he has a really good season to start, obviously you keep him because he's a great player, he's a good asset. But then at the end, on that token, if he's not having a great season, look to trade him, look to flip him ASAP. I know there'd be a lot of teams out there that would look to get him, and I don't really care. You'd be able to get, some type of potential all-star possibly out of him. But the other players that would start on their team, it's interesting because they've got a lot of different players, a lot of moving pieces. Last year in the playoffs, someone like a Boban Marjanovic started, and you wouldn't think that he would normally start, but he just did that good of a job for him last season that he started. I'm not too sure really on who else they would start. Obviously, it'd be a Kristaps, Luka, and a Tim Hardaway Jr. trio for me. At the moment, it's very, very interesting. The more I look at it, the less I actually like this team. But I would say probably someone maybe like a Reggie Bullock would start. I would say someone like him would start. He's done a pretty good job for them in New York this past season. So I reckon someone like him might start. And then probably if it had to be anybody else, it'd be someone like a Jalen Brunson. But I think that Dallas, if they can find a way to make moves, I think there'd be a lot of people that would want to go play with Luka. And I think looking at their team, it's not great, but the reason I have them at number 10 is because, as we've previously seen, there's a couple of teams in the West that are a bit banged up. Like, obviously, someone like a LA Clippers is banged up. Someone like Portland, you're not too sure what they're going to do. They're not injured at all, but I think that's a team that's going to be going in a completely new direction. So for me right now, I would have Dallas at 10, and I'm not hating it, I'm not loving it, but looking more at their team and more in depth at their team sometimes, they can definitely be lower. But right now, I would say number 10 for me is the Dallas Mavericks. Now, number 9 for me, and this might shock a lot of people. This might have some people going a little bit low or a little bit high, but I would have the Denver Nuggets right now as my 9th best team. Now, a lot of people might still say that they're a lot better than what other teams are right now, but I do look at, them previously playing without someone like Jamal Murray, and I know that they played without him and they did a good job without him, but I really believe that that's going to be a big loss for them, especially starting in the regular season. They found a way and they were able to adapt and be, pretty good without being great. But I really do like, them still. But I do think that Jamal Murray, that loss of him at the start of the season, it is going to hurt. You look at their starting lineup now, obviously Jokic at the 5, that's an absolute given. Someone like Aaron Gordon at the 4, man. That was a really good pickup for me, if you ask Dan. That was one of the more underrated pickups. Looking back at the trade deadline now, Nikola Vucevic was one of the bigger trade pieces. But, Aaron Gordon, he's actually going to have a really good fit in Denver, and I think that's a really nice piece, for Denver to move forward. They're still in that really young range, and I think he took someone like a Paul Millsap's spot. So for me, I'm not too worried about that right now. I think Aaron Gordon can be a nice fit. Obviously, Jamal Murray would start, but he's not going to start here. Michael Porter Jr. will definitely start here. I think he's going to be another player on this team that has to take that step up, has to really burden the scoring load now. And I think it's a perfect time for him now to do that. I know there's going to be a lot more defensive coverage on him, but I think he's a player that can really actually be better at being more of a threat and teams, trying to guard him more, because now I think that's what he's used to. Like, you got to remember, every player that comes in the NBA usually is like the number 1 or 2 option whenever they were playing in sport in their careers. So I think it actually might not be a bad thing for him. So I think him at the 3, at the 2, it's interesting because someone like Austin Rivers really played well for them. Would he start? I'm not too sure. They could possibly start a Monte Morris. And they also started Campazzo. He was a really, really good player for them. I thought he was actually much better than what people really recognized. I thought he did a really good job defending the ball, especially in that Portland series, and I think he did a really good job. Even though they got swept against Phoenix, he kept them relevant sometimes. Obviously, the re-signing of Will Barton, him coming off injury, might be a nice piece for them. They could look to start him. I would definitely say they would start someone like a Will Barton. I would have him at the wing, someone like a Mark Porter Jr., probably a Campazzo starting. That way you have someone like a Monte Morris still in his role, still coming off the bench and being an effective player. I think that the more they go along, the more they'll find chemistry. And right now, Jokic is the best center in the NBA. I think he's definitely really, really close to being that top 5 player in the NBA. I know it's hard right now, and I've done, a previous top 10 take, and I know I had him in the top 10, but I didn't have him in the top 5, and that just shows you how stacked that the NBA really is when you really break it down. So for me, right now, number 9 for me, I'd say that's pretty relevant. But I will say, someone like a Paul Millsap, that's a pretty big loss. I know they replaced him with someone like a Jeff Green, but I still think that's a big loss for them. Not just on the court, but off the court. I think he's a really, really genuine person in the NBA, and I think he's someone that really held their locker room together, especially when someone like a Jamal Murray went down. So for me, I would say he's a big loss. But right now, I would have number 9 as the Denver Nuggets. Now, moving into number 8, and I think this is a team that caught a lot of people by surprise last season, and they obviously made the Eastern Conference Finals, which I actually wasn't shocked with when I saw them playing against Philadelphia. Once they got past the first round, I actually wasn't shocked that they made it to the Eastern Conference Finals. And the more the conference finals went, I was like, I'm actually wanting Atlanta to make the finals, and that would have been crazy to see if they made the finals. But obviously, I'm talking about the Atlanta Hawks at number 8. I really like them a lot. I actually like what they've done. They've actually done a rebuild the right way. Like, you look at the rebuild they've done, it has only been 3 to 4 years, really, and not even at that. And the third year, they've gotten to the Eastern Conference Finals, right? Now, do I expect them to get back to the Eastern Conference Finals? Probably not. Probably not. As it stands right now, probably not. There's a couple other teams that I'll talk about in this podcast later, but I don't think that they'll make the Eastern Conference Finals right now. I definitely think they're a top 4 team in the East. They proved a lot to me, and Trae Young proved a lot to me as a leader, as a person who could actually get it done in the playoffs. And that was the one knock on him. Yeah, he can get 30 points a game, but can he do it in the playoffs? He's proven that, to a lot of people. Someone like a Bill Simmons, who I liked listening to a lot. That was the only gripe he had on him, and he said, I've been proven wrong. So I think someone like Trae Young can really lead this team. I think he's a new age NBA player, a new leader in the NBA. Obviously, their starting lineup would obviously be someone like a Trae Young. I think Bogdan Bogdanovic has to start in that team, if you ask me. I actually like Kevin Huerter starting at the 3, But it's hard because you had DeAndre Hunter there who was starting for them, and he was doing a really, really good job. And I know Nate McMillan likes him a lot, so I would say probably they would start DeAndre Hunter. I like Kevin Huerter because it's just instant offense. It's a lot of offense. Obviously, the 4-man would be someone like a John Collins and the 5, Clint Capella, but I just want to touch back on that DeAndre Hunter. They have an abundance of wings, and they're going to have to extend either DeAndre Hunter, Cam Reddish, and I'm not too sure who they're going to pick. I would say maybe one of them could possibly get, and Kevin Huerter, sorry. I would say one of them possibly getting traded, and I don't think they're going to trade Kevin Huerter. I think they like him. I think they like the fit of him and Trae Young. It's kind of like a Kiddies Golden State backcourt where it's not the same, but they're both pretty good shooters at their respective positions. So I think they'll keep that. I'm not too sure who they'll pick, either Cam Reddish or DeAndre Hunter. I know they were trying to push him to be a really big trade as that Cam Reddish. I think the safe bet is to keep someone like DeAndre Hunter, but obviously someone like a Cam Reddish could have a better upside and a better season and a better career, depending on where he goes. If he's going in a really nice fit, he could really have a really good season and career. So for me, I think they're going to have to make a decision there. If they can go out and get someone that's a bit more veteran presence for them, I think that might fit them. But you look at it, they're a pretty young team relatively. They did extend Clint Capella just recently, 2-year, $46 million deal. I think that's going to age pretty average. But in saying that, he got into the Eastern Conference Finals, and Atlanta were lucky. A lot of people thought Atlanta were lucky to make the playoffs. So for me, I really like Atlanta. I think they can be a smoky in the East. I don't know if they can make the conference finals. I would back them getting into the conference semis already, if you ask me. But in saying that, it's so chop and change. I really want to see them try to use more of Danilo Gallinari. I know that they paid him a lot, and they obviously wanted to come off the bench. But I think he's a massive asset. He's a massive talent still. He can still provide at a pretty decent age for what he is. And I think that they should use him more often. But that's just my opinion. That's my take. But right now, I would have them number 8, and I'd be pretty comfortable to say that they're going to be a pretty good team in the Eastern Conference. Number 7, we're going to move on to, and it is always the token talk of the team I'm talking about right now, and that is the Golden State Warriors. Now, a lot of people would say, mate, you are so high on Golden State. Why is that? And then why do you have them at number 7 in your power rankings? That doesn't make any sense. You would say that they could possibly make the conference finals. Absolutely, 100% I think they can make the conference finals. But right now, I don't think that as the way they stand, because Klay Thompson isn't coming back till probably Christmas Day game, that changes things for me. Now, I still believe that they can make the conference finals. I absolutely 100% believe that. And I believe if you love a punt, look at any sports betting agencies you can. Put $10, put $20 on Golden State to make the conference finals. I think it's a smart bet. I don't think it's a bad bet at all. But having Klay Thompson out till Christmas, I don't think they're going to be as good in the standings. But if you look at it, I really rate them so highly. You look at their starting 5, Steph Curry, that's a lot. That's a lot right there. Just one player. He is probably one player that has been for, consistent part of 5 years, the hardest player to guard. If depending on who you ask, and I would say KD's one of the most unguardable, but you got to think about it. Steph Curry comes off so many off-ball screens. Sometimes he barely has the ball in his hands. Sometimes the only time he has the ball in his hands on an offensive trip is when he catches and shoots it, right? So you have to run around all the time. You have to do all these things for him. That's a really, really hard to guard player, an unguardable player for me, if you ask me. So for me, I would say Steph Curry at the 1. That's an obvious take. The 2 is a really interesting take. Who could they play at one of the wing positions? Obviously, we already know that Andrew Wiggins would most likely be the starting 3-man, kind of like what a Harrison Barnes was. But that 2-man can be interesting. It can be someone like possibly, Andre Iguodala. He could definitely do that. I would say that you bring him off the bench. Possibly a Damian Lee. Possibly a Otto Porter Jr. Possibly a Jordan Poole. There's 4 to 5 pieces there that you could possibly start at the wing, right? So it's definitely going to be interesting. Even a Jonathan Kuminga, Moses Moody. There's a lot of these players that you could start at, another wing position. I would say if I'm Golden State, I'd need to look at someone who can fit in that system really well, who can get you off the fast starts. I would probably start at Otto Porter Jr. right now as a safe bet. Obviously, you could start someone like an Iggy, but Iggy's been coming off the bench for a long, long time. He knows his role. He knows how to play that role really well and effectively, so I'd keep him on the bench. Obviously, the 4-man would be Draymond, and I would say right now, I would start James Wiseman. And one of the good friends of this show, Chris, he actually is a massive Golden State fan himself, and he said that he would start someone like a Kevin Looney. Now, I absolutely see why they would start a Kevin Looney, and a lot of people might not see it, but fit-wise, he knows how to play for that. He doesn't need to be an effective player. And now if you bring James Wiseman off the bench, he can just go out and do his thing. And what he does really well, and his thing right now, is scoring the ball. Can't play a lick of defense right now. Very average at that. Has been proven that he can't play defense. But I still think having someone like a Draymond Green for him is the best thing for him in his career. It's going to make him play defense, especially if he starts. And I believe he'll definitely start. That's my dead set opinion. I think he'll start there for sure. And it's not even a question. But someone like a Kevin Looney could definitely start, but I think that if Golden State didn't trade him now and hasn't traded him, I think they're growing more on him, and I think they're believing he can be more of a stock, asset for them. And they could definitely trade him. I could be wrong, but I think they actually like him a bit more than what they anticipated. They could have obviously taken LaMelo Ball, and I dead set would have. I would have at that time, absolutely. I understood why they took James Wiseman fit-wise, but if you could have had Clay, Steph, LaMelo, Draymond, Kevin Looney at the 5, that's a hard 5. This year would have been, proven gold. But in saying that, everything happens for a reason. They have a lot of depth on this team. I think they're the deepest team in the NBA. 6-man could possibly be. So let's think about it. We're starting Steph Curry, I'll say Otto Porter, Andrew Wiggins, Draymond Green, James Wiseman. 6, 7, 8 obviously would be Andre Iguodala. You would have someone like a Jordan Poole possibly. You'd have someone like a Kevin Looney, Damian Lee, Neemansa Bielitsa, Juan Toscano Anderson, who I really, really like. And then we're not even talking about the rookies that they've drafted in Jonathan Kuminga and Moses Moody. So they are a really deep team. I really think that they're still going to be in the conference finals this year. I think a lot of people are going to sleep on them. I could talk for so long about them, but I'm going to keep it a bit shorter than what I used to. But I think, Golden State right now, number 7. I still think that they're going to be a force in this team. And I'd have a lot more insurance, and I would say I'd have a lot more faith in them beating, some of these teams than other teams I'm going to talk about now. And rolling into that, a team that I would talk about at number 6 would be Utah Jazz. And Utah, for me, I think they're the definition of what Milwaukee were a couple of years ago. A team that's going to be really, really good in the regular season all the time. Plays a really good system, really good coaching. That might be the other opposite between Mike Budenholzer and Quinn Snyder. I think Quinn Snyder is a much better coach than someone like a Mike Budenholzer. But in saying that, he is a coach of the year in the NBA, and say what you want, he's still a coach of the year in the NBA. So for me, I would say Utah, they're going to be a team that's going to be really good in the regular season, but will they be able to prove it in the playoffs? That's my only gripe and my only opinion I have on them. Now, I actually was pretty high on what they've done in the offseason. I really like the pickup of Rudy Gay. I think that's a really smart pickup. I really, really like that. I like the pickup of Hassan Whiteside. He's basically a kiddies Rudy Gobert at this point in his career. Getting someone like a Eric Pascal for a second-round pick, that's interesting for me. I wonder why Golden State sold him, possibly for so low. But then if you look at it, he didn't really have a great season this past season. So it's very interesting for me to see that he's going to be traded already. I obviously think that their starting lineup would be obviously Mike Conley. You would have a Donovan Mitchell, obviously. You would have someone like Joe Ingles, but then you have Bojan Bogdanovic. I would start both of them. You got your 3 and 4, and then you have a Rudy Gobert at the 5. I wouldn't be shocked if they actually start Rudy Gay, to be honest with you. I wouldn't be shocked there, but I would say that 5-man, that 3-4, would be Bojan and Joe Ingles. I think, in saying that, the more I look at this Utah team, they've done what they needed to do. They got some good veteran presence. So now you look at their 6, 7, 8 rotation, if you ask me. 6-man would probably be Jordan Clarkson, 7, Rudy Gay, 8-man, Hassan Whiteside, 9-man, Royce O'Neal. I rate him a lot. I think he's a great pick. And then you got your 10 and someone like Eric Pascal, whatever you want to say. So I think they've actually done a pretty good job. The more I look at it, the more I analyze this, I actually am liking them more and more, and I possibly could have had them over a couple of teams, but I think number 6 is actually a really nice piece, a really nice fit for them, and I think a lot of people might have a lot of stock on them, and I wouldn't be shocked to see them get the number 1 seed in the West again. To be quite honest with you, I think they're a team that really loves playing those teams, because they can just put teams to the sword, and their system works really well. So for me, right now, number 6 is the Utah Jazz. Now, this is the final 5. This is where it gets a bit interesting for me. And number 5, I have the team that's just come off of West Finals runner-up, and that is the Phoenix Suns. For me, Phoenix at number 5, I could have had them at number 6 and could have had Utah higher, but I just think that the experience that they gained in getting to the finals last year, it's going to be invaluable for someone like a Donovan Mitchell and a Devin Booker and DeAndre Ayton. I really like those two young players. I always had liked someone like a Devin Booker. I obviously might not have been as high on him as what other people have thought, but I always thought he could have definitely been an all-star caliber player. I know one of my good mates, Duff, loves him a lot, thinks he was going to be a dead-set stud when he was playing in Kentucky. So I do like them a lot. You know, you look at their starting 5, it's probably going to be the same 5 from last season, and that's something that's really, really important if you ask me. They have that, chemistry. You probably got someone like Chris Paul, who's probably going to, for me, still have another good 2 years left in his career, and then we might see him go a little bit down, a little bit up, but I'm not too sure. But they're starting 5, Chris Paul, Devin Booker, Mikal Bridges, Jay Crowder, DeAndre Ayton. You don't touch that starting 5. That is a really good starting 5 for me. It's a great fitting starting 5. It really fits a lot of ways. I actually like the pickup they got in JaVale McGee. I think that's a really good insurance policy for them, especially if someone like a DeAndre Ayton gets in a little bit of foul trouble. At least you can plug him, and he can do his job, and he's consistent at doing his job, and he's proven that, for a long, long time now in the NBA, since he's been in Golden State, which has been a long time. He's actually been a really proven player. Jalen Smith, for me, is another player that could definitely make a jump. He actually had a pretty decent summer league, and he could possibly take those minutes that someone like Dario Saric was taking. A lot of us know that he tore his ACL, unfortunately, and that was a big loss for someone like a Phoenix, if you ask me. I think they really relied on him a lot, and I think it hurt them more than what they anticipated. So for me, Jalen Smith, hopefully he takes a step up from them. That can be a great asset for them. But you look at their 6, 7, 8 rotation for me, 6, 7, 8 in no particular order. Cameron Johnson, I think he's going to be a really, really good player in the NBA. He probably won't ever start on this Phoenix team, but that's until Jay Crowder, deteriorates a bit. But I think he can be what Jay Crowder is a little bit. Obviously, he doesn't have that defensive presence and that dog in him, but he can shoot the ball at a really, really efficient level, much better than what a lot of people thought. He's actually got sneaky athleticism, and I actually just rate him as an all-round basketball player. I think he's got a pretty smart brain. He's better than what the eye first sees. He's a definite player that you can't judge him. You can't judge a book by its cover. That's like a Cameron Johnson. You can't really judge him by what he looks like and how he warms up. You got to see how he plays, and he's an effective player when he's on the court. Someone like Cameron Payne would definitely be in that rotation too. I think that he didn't have a great final series, but he had a decent playoff series, if you ask me. He had one really shining light where he had that 30-point piece. But for me, I think he just needs to get into that consistent role and that consistent system. And I think someone like Monty Williams, that's who I'm thinking of. He did a good job in, ensuring him that he'll get minutes and believing in him. And that's why I think someone like a Monty Williams is still one of the best coaches in the league. He dead set proved that already. But for me, I think he's becoming more of a household name, and I think he'll be a coach in this league for a long, long time. As long as he wants to coach in Phoenix, I think that might be a thing for him, especially now that they've gotten to the finals. Now that there's anticipation on them, though, in saying that, I think that they'll handle that pretty well. I think that they've realized that, getting to this far, they probably have sour grapes, and they probably have that sour taste in their mouth. And I think they'll want to really get back to the finals. So for me, number 5, I really like. Also, Landry Shamet, he's a nice little pickup too. So I think that they've gotten better, if you ask me. If Dario Saric comes back a bit earlier, it might be a great help for them. But I think they've gotten a little bit better, if you ask me. Now, number 4 for me, I think this is the team that had the best offseason in the NBA, Miami Heat. Now, everybody knows I love the Heat. I love everything they're about, everything they do. I really started to like them in the bubble a lot. Once Jimmy Butler got there, I really liked seeing what they were doing. How they will become in a team, is something that I really like to see. They added Kyle Lowry, who, if you ask me, might have been one of the best free agent pickups they've had in a long, long time. I think he's much more valuable than what people really think. I think the best fit for someone like Kyle Lowry would have been Miami or Lakers, and I think that he's gotten to this team at the right time, especially for Jimmy Butler. It's at this point where now he knows he's got a consistent dog he knows he can rely on. He knows he can already rely on someone like a Bam Adebayo. Tyler Hero has been a bit inconsistent. I know that, a lot of people are, giving him a lot of shit and this and that, but I still think he can be an effective player in this league. Definitely, I still believe that. I also think that Duncan Robinson is a much better player than what people anticipate, people think. If you're a purist of basketball, you don't understand how good of a player he is, Watch him, just him entirely, and watch what he does on the court, how many times he moves, how many times he really has the basketball in his hands, and that's how effective he is without the ball in his hands. Now, a lot of people can say, is he really a good player, or is he just really good at shooting, and that's a priority right now in the NBA? Doesn't matter. He's a good shooter, probably a great shooter, if you ask me. He's going to be an asset in this league. Now, they also went up and picked up someone like a PJ Tucker for me, who I think is a massive pickup. I think he'll probably start at the 4-man position, if you ask me. Their starting lineup looks tough already. Kyle Lowry, Duncan Robinson, I would start, Jimmy, PJ Tucker, and Bam Adebayo. You have defensive player in Bam, defensive player in Jimmy, defensive player in PJ, defensive player in Kyle Lowry. That is going to be so hard to score on. Then you have Duncan Robinson, a straight-out shooter. 6-man, I think, could be someone like a Tyler Hero, absolutely. 7-man rotation, obviously you have a Victor Oladipo. If he can get back to where he was peak, I think this team is absolutely going to be outstanding. Obviously, you still have Markieff Morris, who they picked up, who's not going to be a nice signing for them. I actually like the player that they've had for a couple of years now, and that's Gabe Vincent Jr. I think he's going to step up and be a really nice piece to them. I know a lot of people don't really know him. He's not a massive household name, but I think he'll have a much bigger impact than what people think on this team. I'm really high on this team. I really, really like them. I think that they can definitely be in that Eastern Conference Finals if chips fall their way, if they have the right luck. But right now, number 4 for me would be the Miami Heat. Top 3 now. This is where it gets really interesting. There's only 3 teams left. Third team, I think, right now, power rankings, and that is the Milwaukee Bucks. Now, a lot of people would probably have them at number 1 because you think about it. They won the championship. You know, they didn't really get that much worse, but they didn't really get that much better. But the reason I have them at number 3 is I think PJ Tucker's a massive loss. It's a bigger loss than what people are going to anticipate. I really rate him so much for that team. I think that was something they really, really needed. You know, you look at it, who's probably going to start at their 4-man position right now? Well, let's really have a look. Their starting lineup, it's going to be basically the same. Drew Holiday, Chris Middleton. I would say Giannis. You know, PJ Tucker, I'm not too sure. I would say Pat Connaughton right now, and then you'd have Brook Lopez. But then you look at it, it's very interesting. You could probably start a Bobby Portis there, and I think they're probably backing and they're banking on him to start. But I would probably start someone like a Pat Connaughton because you know that system works and you know Bobby does a really good job coming off the bench. But it's going to be interesting either way they play, what position they play where. But I actually like a couple of the pieces they picked up. I think, you know, them taking a little punt on someone like a Rodney Hood's actually a smart calculated risk. I actually like the pickup of George Hill a lot. I think he's a really smart player. He fits in any system, anytime. So I really like those players. You know, that's a good 6-7. Jeff Teague, I'm not too sure. I'm not even too sure if he re-signed with them, to be quite honest. But, you know, I think that George Hill's probably a better pickup right now. It's probably a little bit more of an upgrade right now. Depending on what Dante DiVincenzo does, if he comes back in time, I reckon he can be a great fit. And he would probably start, if you ask me. You maybe start someone like a Chris Middleton at the 4, but it's very interesting right now. And then you have a Grayson Allen right now who you could possibly start. He can be a dead set pest for you. A lot of people think he's a dirty player. I think he's just a bit of a pest. I think he's a player that you hate to play against and you love to play with. But in saying that, I think, you know, right now Milwaukee, they'll probably be a really good team in the regular season. They'll still be a playoff contender. But you got to realize, like, if you win the championship, you don't have to really do as many acquisitions and, you know, get as many players in and out. And I just think, for me, I think that they got a great system now. Winning that championship for them, I think it's going to take a lot of pressure off of them and just going to let them to play. And they'll know when to pick it up and they'll know when to, you know, pump the brakes a little bit. And I think that Mike Budenholzer's in the championship race now and he doesn't really give a fuck about that, you know, regular season right now. So I think for them, they're definitely going to be a top 3 team in the NBA. Now, moving into top 2, there's obviously 2 teams left, the Lakers and the Nets. And if you ask a lot of people, this can be, you know, either or. But for me, I have number 2 as the Lakers right now. The reasons I have them as number 2 is I'm not as sold on their roster as everybody usually is. But it's not because of the age. I don't think it's because of the age at all. I think the age is not really that big of a problem. I just know I'm not too sure about all of the fit-wise. Now, I think the best signing for them that they did was probably someone like a Rajon Rondo, if you ask me, because he's super duper smart. Like, a lot of people, you don't realize, he's probably the smartest player in the NBA. A lot of people might say LeBron. I think Jokic is right up there, but I would say Rondo's probably the smartest player in the NBA right now. I think he's more important than a lot of the signings they've done, and I think it actually shows you that LeBron needed a little bit more help, especially IQ range in that Lakers team, and I think he's going to be a really good fit. But then you look at a lot of their team, a lot of their people they've picked up. Carmelo Anthony, he knows how to play. Trevor Ariza, a dead set veteran. Kent Bazemore did a pretty good job with Golden State last year. Wayne Ellington, dead set shooter, who's probably going to play a lot more than what people think. I think he can play a lot more than what people think. He'll either play a lot or play nothing. You've got still a re-signing of Dwight Howard, who should have never left in the first place. I think he realized that. You still got Wesley Matthews on this team as it stands. I think he's definitely a player that should have been much better for them last season, but I'm not too sure why he wasn't. It is interesting, and I definitely think that he could have a bounce-back season. But then you look at it, they've added some other guards in like a Malik Monk and a Kendrick Nunn. And then obviously the biggest acquisition for them is Russell Westbrook. Now, it's very interesting to see what they're going to do. Obviously, their starting lineup will have Russell, LeBron, AD. I would say AD at the 4 just to start. We all know that AD is a better 5-man. He hates playing it for some reason. I'm not too sure why. If you think about it, the NBA is not as tough as what it used to be. You could start AD at the 5. I think that's the best option. You'd probably start a Carmelo or Trevor Ariza. But I'm not too sure who they'll start. They obviously still have Taylor Horton-Tucker there. They have a lot of players. Don't get me wrong. They have a lot of players that they could definitely start and plug into. But for me, right now, not too sure what they'll do. If I had to, gun to my head, who's going to start for them? Westbrook, I would say, it's hard at that 2-man, 3-man LeBron, 4-man AD. I'd say 5-man. It's hard. It's hard. I think that actually they're going to start AD at the 5. They'll start either Carmelo or Trevor. So I'll say Carmelo. They'll start LeBron, Taylor Horton-Tucker, and Westbrook. And I think that's probably a decent 5. That way you have instant offense in someone like a Kendrick Nunn and Malik Monk off the bench. But for me, there's too many players I think that's going to try to compete for minutes. I think that's going to hurt them a lot. And I still think they're definitely going to make the finals as it stands now. But I'm just interested to see how they play also fit-wise. I think there's a lot of different there is different personalities, but I don't think that's the problem. I think it's just mesh-wise how it fits. There's not a lot of shooting on this team, and that's what LeBron usually needs a lot more. Carmelo's a good shooter, but he's more of a mid-range shooter. He's a gun mid-range shooter, probably one of the best ever. His mid-range game is probably the best ever, if you ask me. Just by a basketball purist, just watching it, it's so clean to watch. If you ever want to watch that, just look up Carmelo Anthony mix on YouTube, or look at Carmelo Anthony high post, and you'll just see how good he really is. But for me right now, I have him at number 2 because I think that the number 1 team in the NBA right now is the Brooklyn Nets, and I don't care what anybody says. That team right now is the best team on paper, and that's all we're going off right now. That's all we're going off right now, and we can't go off anything else in the NBA. You look at their team is stacked to the top, to the brim. I think a lot of people underestimate how good this team really, really is. I really like a lot of the pickups they've done. And, they didn't have a massive off-season to start with, but then they've just come with this massive flurry. You look at it, free agent signings, Javon Carter, DeAndre Bembry, it's all right. It's whatever, this and that. Then they go out and sign Patty Mills, who for me is a massive pickup. I think it's bigger than what a lot of people actually recognize. James Johnson, really good pickup, if you ask me. I actually like him. Brings a lot of toughness, grit to this team. And then, obviously, in the past coming days, the massive pickup of Paul Millsap. He is huge for them. I really rate him a lot. I think he's going to be great for them. And then, obviously, LaMarcus Aldridge getting cleared again to play in the NBA. What a great thing to see for a lot of people. I think he's going to be a dead-set weapon for them. You look at their starting 5, bro, there's so many options you can do. Obviously, Kyrie, Harden, KD will start, but then the other 2 positions are dead set open. I would tend to say they'll start Joe Harris because he's a shooter and he fits really well with them. But at that 5-man position, you can go Blake Griffin, go small. You can go LaMarcus Aldridge. There's no wrong position there to go off. One of them is going to have to come off the bench, if you ask me, unless they start Joe Harris off the bench. But I think having that KD at the 4-man position is pretty kiddies. It's pretty tough to play against. But then, now you look at it, so I would probably say, gun to my head, they'll start Blake Griffin first, just because he had a bit more consistent, and, LaMarcus Aldridge is still coming off that, blood clot, so I think they're going to play him the safe game, the long route. Sorry, just having a little drink there. But yeah, for me, they're 6, 7, 8, LaMarcus would be in there, Paul Millsap would be in there, obviously Patty Mills would be in there, obviously for me, that is a dead set deep 8, that's a really deep 8. Now you got 9, 10, interesting. Bruce Brown for me would be the ninth. You know, he's definitely in there. I think you got to play him a lot. I really like him. I think he's kind of like what Caruso was to the Lakers. I think he's a much more of an asset than what people think and realize. That 10 position, it can either be like a James Johnson on his day or it can be anyone on their day, really. Like, I'm not too sure who it could be. Obviously, it could be a Nicholas Claxton. He's still a good player. But then if you're playing Paul Millsap and LaMarcus Aldridge, you don't really need that big at the moment. So I would say probably more of a wing or a four-man. I'll probably say James Johnson possibly, definitely, or Timothy Luwawu-Cabarrot, or a Tyler Johnson. Like, that's how deep this team is. So for me, dead set, without a doubt, Brooklyn's the best team in the NBA. If it was to start today, Brooklyn would be the favorites in my eyes and my opinion. But that's just my opinion right now, guys. If you guys think any different, like, please let me know. But guys, as it stands right now, 6th September, the Brooklyn Nets are the best team in the NBA. Thanks for listening, guys. Thanks for listening, guys, to another episode of the Lanes Podcast. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe all the content. Hit us up on Instagram at LanesMedia_. That's all under capitalized letters. The link will be down below in the description. Thanks for listening, guys, again. Take care. Have a great day. Peace.